And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and I have the extreme pleasure and honor to have with me, I call him Mr. USA Rugby. He's been called many things, Captain America, one of the best looking men on the pitch, Mr. Todd Clever himself. Todd, welcome to the show. Thank you for having you here. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me on here. It's excited to talk rugby and life and everything in between.
Yeah, great, great. Again, so for those of you who are new to the channel or who are new to USA Rugby in general, uh, if you don't know who Todd Clever is, let me we have a long list of accolades to describe this gentleman, but just to give you in a nutshell why I am just so happy to have Todd on the show. Todd Clever is right now the most capped USA Eagles, sitting at 76 caps. He has been the captain for the majority of that time. Also has 16 tries, which is tied for fifth for the most, along with a couple of people that we know, Mikey Teo, Chris Wiles as well. Uh, he participated in the 2011 Rugby World Cup, where he was the captain. He was also in the 2007 Rugby World Cup. Not only in the 15s, he also played in the USA Eagles as well. Sevens, 2009, 2000 through 2011. He was in the 2005 and 2007 Rugby World Cup with the Sevens. And that's only here in the United States. He has also been the very first American player to play in Super Rugby, as well as scored the very first American try for Super Rugby playing with the Lions. He also had a stint in the Premiership with the Newcastle Falcons. And of course, the one that I love the most, we talked about this earlier, had a time in Japan playing for my favorite team, the Suntory Sungoliath, where they also captured a championship in 2012. And also forgot to mention 2017, a D1 club championship with the Austin Huns. I mean, again, did I miss anything? I'm sure I missed quite a few other things, Todd, but I mean, that is wow. If you want to talk about a storied career, I don't think you can really look further than Todd Clever. Not to embarrass you, Todd, about all that, but what an amazing career you have had.
No, it was a lot of fun. I had a really good time. I was fortunate to sign some great contracts and have some life experiences, have amazing teammates from all over. My first contract actually was in New Zealand, and then went to Super Rugby to South Africa, then Japan, England, and back to the States. So, hopped around, but I always made USA my priority, playing for the Eagles. So every time I had a contract offer, I always made sure that there was a clause of releasing me for national team duty. Just especially whenever I got capped, how much it meant for me, but also wearing that captain's armband and leading the team. So that's probably why I do have the most caps. So I don't think I was the best American rugby player ever. Definitely not the fastest or the strongest or any of those sort of things. But my dedication to the Eagles, that is something that I will always hold proud for myself.
And I feel, I didn't watch too much of your career. I'll admit to that because I came in a little bit later to the end of your career. But I felt a lot of times watching games that you played, a lot of the passion that you see on the pitch, you could definitely see every time that you came on. And I feel that is why, like you said, you were the captain, you led by example, you're a very passionate player. And that speaks volumes, I feel, when you're playing such an aggressive and rough sport like rugby, and why it's alluded to so much to your career.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that with the new general manager, head coach of the USA Eagles, Scott Lawrence. He has a really good grasp of what it is to be an American Eagle, and talk to a lot of us alumni. And one of the things that he took from our conversation is, I played my best rugby in the Eagle jersey, wearing red, white, blue, just because of how much it meant for me, the sacrifice, just the proudness and just what it represented for that. So, that's kind of what we wanted to reiterate to the current Eagles and future Eagles of like, yeah, you are going to have a professional team if it's in the MLR or if it's overseas. But no, everything comes to a halt, and it's always a little bit different whenever you're playing test rugby or representing something even bigger than yourself.
Nice. I like that. We'll talk a little bit more because just literally in a couple of days, USA Eagles will be doing a tour of Europe, playing against Portugal, Tonga, and Spain. If we have the time, we'll go a little bit and talk about those games because some very tough competition for the USA Eagles. Before we get to that, though, again, talking about your stint with the USA Eagles, early 2000s, now we're in 2020s. Obviously, you've seen a drastic change in the USA Eagles. You've seen probably a drastic change with just the representation of US of rugby in the United States in general. What is your take right now from your experience as a Eagles player to seeing the crop now being developed as well as the state and interest of rugby in the United States? How do you feel that progress is going?
Yeah, I mean, just to rewind, I mean, I even go from before 2000, before I started, representing the men's, senior national team. I played on the USA Under-19 team for 3 years.
Right,
Um,
right.
so I am a product of pathway, So, like I said, played on the USA Under-19 team for 3 years. Made the college All-Americans. Did that for 3 years. Was on the sevens team on the circuit, and then went into 15s. So I've seen the pathway, and I've seen grassroots. I've seen leagues in high school and club grow so much. University statuses, from giving scholarships to high performance. It's not just a club sport across the board. You're actually getting some really good athletes, really good coaching, and the top universities and their facilities are making way for rugby. So that's really positive across that. So that landscape has changed so much. And then when you come to the Eagles, that's one thing, unfortunately, I don't think has changed too much is, if it's, we don't have, essentially contracted players. They're all on per. There's not money into it. There's, you wonder like how often the team is together and if it's all working together. One of the biggest pieces that we were missing in American rugby was a professional league on our shores, and we were started to form the MLR, and that was 2017, 2018. We kickstarted it, and that was, in my eyes, the most successful year, way more successful then than it is now. And the reason why I say that is the amount of Americans that were playing in that league compared to what is on those teams now. Mostly overseas players. And I understand you want to booster up everything else, but I really don't believe it. The MLR is making our national team better. It's a bold statement.
Okay, yeah.
Very popular one, but I truly believe that, it taking back. Rewind it, for the first year, 2018, with the Major League Rugby, we went out and we beat Scotland. The first ever time we had. You go to 2018 MLR final, we had over 22 Americans starting on that, final. You go to this year, we have 5 Americans starting on both the teams in the
Sure.
So it's drastically where our American players aren't playing tough competition. They're not, getting enough minutes in tough, mentally straining games, physically straining games. So, I really do believe that is the reason why we're not, set up for success that way. But it's still exciting time for rugby. I definitely do think there's a place for Major League Rugby, especially with the men's and women's Rugby World Cup coming on our shores, and our runway for us hosting it has gotten a lot shorter. But there's still time for us to making sure that we're getting out in the communities, we're teaching kids and parents and schools and communities about the sport, the great sport rugby. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but there is time to, really make waves that way.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about that because you brought up some very good points, which, again, with our YouTube channel, Rugby411, we do focus a lot on Major League Rugby. And I know a lot of the fans that watch and partake conversation with me about MLR, there is still that argument about, well, where are all the American players? We have a lot of teams that are starting to bring in, and granted, there is that rule of international players. There's a certain lock number how you can have. Obviously, they can trade international slots, so you can have a team that kind of fully bare loaded with players. But there is that criticism that you bring up, which is very interesting, that there seems to be on a lot of teams less and less of that American representation, even though it is a pro sport in America. Now, we did just recently, though, develop an all-American side now with our Anthem team, which the goal is to develop purposely spotlighting young American players on that roster. Granted, they had a pretty rough go, didn't win anything this season, but you saw a lot of really great talent starting to be developed there. Do you feel that concept for that team, which is also a very unique concept in and of itself? You don't see too many NFL teams or Major League Baseball teams having a team that's purposely kind of a developmental team. Do you think that's a good solution, or do you think that might just be kind of just a way to appease certain criticism? What are your thoughts on having the Anthem team?
I mean, I love that they're giving opportunities to Americans to be full-time players, and
Okay.
their setup and the runway ahead of that season was very short, and
yes,
so you're right out of the bat, you're not setting them up for success.
Sure.
Have a draft, and some of these other teams are, picking some other Americans, and if they're going to trade them back or try to get more foreigners on their team to get more salary space or whatever, some of these teams and the league that's letting them do that. Right. I don't agree with a lot of that. But I do agree with, having, World Rugby invest into, the Anthem to, because we are targeting that age group of guys that are going to be, being able to represent the USA at that 2031, Rugby World Cup. So getting them in a full-time professional environment, from their medical, being able to look after their nutrition, and then full-time coaching is fantastic. But you kind of look at the setup of Major League Rugby, and it's half the year. So I mean, World Rugby is and these other franchises are giving 6-month contracts for players. What's happening in this other 6 months? Like how are they, helping out with that? So some of the things that I see out in the community that I've actually been part of, where I think that could be a big help for MLR and American Rugby and developing athletes is the Rugby 10s championship, which has been hugely successful. The
yes.
style of rugby is fast, it's physical. There's game plans, and people are getting a lot of reps, and I really see that being a huge tool for MLR, for the Americans that are trying to be seen, or the transition guys that are 7s wanting to go into 15s, or vice versa, 15s players wanting to go into 7s. So it is that bit of sweet spot, and if they get the calendar right, of having it on off season, and if there's a lot of good backing, there's actually a lot of legs for that.
I like that idea, actually. And of course, on a side, the way that we connected, though, I don't know if you remember this, Todd, we met around the time that the Giltinis were around, because you were working at least close with them that first year. So you were at a few of the games. So we met a couple of times at those games. But of course, now we've been reconnected with the Rugby 10s, with the Rhinos, which, again, you have so many accolades to you. You're the GM of the Rhinos group here down in San Clemente, that is hosting the Rugby 10s Championship, which, as you mentioned before, really amazing event. You have a lot of caliber of talent, people that are, like you said, sevens that are trying to maybe try something more 15s like, or 15s player trying to get a little bit faster with a faster pace of the tens, almost at a sevens level. But you have to see all different walks of talent. Uh, but you see that academy with the Rhinos just popping up kind of sporadically. There are a few other academies, I believe, on the East. Do you think that those academies like a Rhino, along with the Rugby Tens kind of event that will fill in the off season, if we want to call it for MLR, would help kind of make uh, people that want to keep their talent or develop their talent keep that going in those off seasons?
Yeah, I mean, from an athlete side of things, from a coaching side of things, from a management side of things, you're not just paying your headquarters for 6 months of the year. It's a 12 month.
Right.
So to have it being so quiet, where you can actually, give back to the sport and giving opportunities and keeping your players, sharp and fit and, reps going instead of just waiting till the first of the year to start your preseason. And it's actually dangerously short is the Major League Rugby preseason, where that's, I don't think that's in the best interest of the players. Want to make sure that there's an actual proper preseason where they're going into the season on stride. So what I would probably see in this again in the MLR season, the first couple rounds are a little bit sloppy. People aren't as sharp. People aren't as fit. People aren't, ready for those hits. So again, this would be a really good tool to have, even just your American players, participate in this, Rugby Tens championship. So they get the reps, so they get, nutrition, they get the sharpen their skills. And obviously the fitness, comes along with it. So, I mean, I think it would be a massive tool for the American rugby, player to, on the other side of that season.
Got it. I think that's actually a really great idea. I know there's a lot that has to go into that than just to say, hey, let's just make it happen because it makes sense. But I think that definitely does bode a very interesting.
Don't overthink it, Josh. You know what? You have these American players that you contracted, and they know that they're going to be there if it's going to be January 2nd or whenever that preseason is, and then they know their contract's going to be done at the end of June. What are they doing July till December? Like, how are they? Yeah. So I mean, there isn't that much to it, if
right.
If you want to, get your players to be, in better shape, to get them more reps and to have them being a more well-rounded player. So it's just a matter of like, yeah, we do see this. We could invest in this, or this is something that has legs that's gonna, better, community, educate more, get out in the community, work on our players, and then ultimately could, one of these MLR teams could actually enter it, just like San Diego Legion did.
Right, yeah. A
pioneer of it. They're the first MLR team to have a women's, where they're, and it's a spectacular, scene to see that of being like, hey, this could actually be the future of these off seasons for MLR. Like, what you're getting into the women's, you're getting into the girls, you're getting into the youth, and then obviously your fringe players or your American players or guys coming back that need more reps, they could be playing on it. So I mean that's one of the great things about the Rugby Tens Championship is it's hitting so many different categories, not just your men professional athlete. It goes from your pathway to getting guys reps all the way till your youngsters and then obviously the fans around.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, Todd. I'm trying not to overthink it, but I love it. I do love that. Let's talk about the youth that you're talking about. So again, bringing back where you were starting, you did start with the juniors, under 19, junior Eagles. You were in 2 World Cups with 2001, 2002, from what I understand. So like you said, you were a bright product. You started also in college with University of Nevada, 3-time collegiate All-American, working your way up to the junior Eagles. So like you said, you've done the pathway. Now let's fast forward to today. How do you see the pathway? Granted, we do have now a collegiate draft or Major League Rugby. Again, we do have some criticism arguments of how well that draft has been going, but that is starting to show a lot of people that pathway for collegiate players to get into the pro league. But how do you feel the process that you went through? Is it still the same? Is it different? Is it worse? Is it better? What do you see the process, the pathway for young athletes that want to try to go pro here in the United States? How do you see that process going right now?
Mate, I'm going to be real to you.
Yeah,
It hasn't changed too much in the fact that to play elite rugby, it's a big financial burden on the player and families.
got it,
Our,
got it.
our under 18 best boys, our under 18 best girls, our under 20 best boys, under 20 best girls have to pay a lot of money to go to these tryouts. They have to pay a lot of money on these tours. USA Rugby is not fitting the bill. World Rugby is not fitting the bill. It's coming down to, fundraising. It's kind of coming down to that. So, partnerships are so important. But I mean, I remember, I was lucky enough to have my parents being able to be in a situation to, let me go on tour with USA 19 in 2000 to Australia, where I played with my brother. Let me, play, in Chile and Italy for the Junior World Cups. That was huge. Making college All-Americans. Also fundraising. And being in a situation to do that. The draft. From MLR to that. It's a bit of how Americans view sports. You do the NBA draft. You do the NFL. Rugby is a little bit different because a lot of our best athletes aren't going to these top colleges. So instead of thinking like, just, a college and everything else, it could be, an under 23, draft where people are at trade school or people are college or people are part of a club, men's club, and they, are doing something other than college. College isn't for everybody. So I think we, there could definitely, broaden that draft. But then also, whenever you're picking a player, rugby is something so different than basketball, where they measure you, they measure your width, your and not so much of what kind of character you are. Rugby is such amazing sport with the great core values. You want to see that. So if I'm a team and I'm picking somebody, I want to talk to them. I want to see with the competition. I want to see how they interact with someone cleaning the kitchen. I want to see if they take the trash out or they have to be asked to, or they let somebody else do it. You want to have team players. You want to have the best of the best. And I ultimately think if you give the opportunities for people to succeed outside the field and make them happy, to have them feel safe and confident, they'll play their best rugby and they'll play hard for you and you'll train. So, I think they could do, the MLR has an opportunity of doing something really special with that, that next draft group of, if it's a week-long camp of, it is going to be some hard work training and testings and everything else, but interacting with players, interacting with the coaches, because, the locker room is so important. The rugby community more so than any other sport, I believe. And you want to have good people. And ultimately, if you pick a draft, you want to, shape them. You want to, have that pathway and ultimately your drafts, you want them to play for the Eagles. That's what their mind it should be. Not just like, what can we get out of our 2 years that we just signed from you? It's like, hey, we're investing in this person, that can go really good. And if you pick a good person, you're more willing to invest, more so into them, their family, their future, and obviously the accolades will come along with that.
Now, this actually leads a nice little sidestep to what you're doing, because you just talked about it is right now, it's not NFL where there's these lucrative contracts. It's not Major League Baseball lucrative contracts. It's still very much, like you said, players have to foot the bill if they want to try to get their name out there. And so what I understand with your Todd Clever Foundation is that you are offering scholarships to players. I saw recently the Lit Sevens, the London International Trade Sevens. You're offering scholarships to players to be able to do their traveling. They are doing an event in Florida, I believe, in the next couple of weeks. And again, not everybody can afford a trip to Florida, especially the LIT is based in London. Not everyone can afford a trip to London. So let's talk a little bit about the Todd Clever Foundation. Was that the mindset of why you established the foundation? Because you knew the hardships that these players had to go through.
100%. I remember going to, playing rugby in high school, and playing against, West Sacramento, playing against some Jesuit schools, playing against, some Polynesian, tough, competition. And, inner cities was coming up and I played against them. And whenever I went to the trials for USA Under 19, I was nervous going into it. And when I up, it was, none of those guys were there. None of the, the Samoans, the Tongans were there. And I was like, lucky for me that day. But at the end of the day, when I did make the team, I knew that was not the best USA Under 19 that we could have fielded. So going into these World Cups, going into these tours, going into this, yeah, I was proud to make it, but I knew in the back of my mind that, these aren't the best. I wasn't with the best. I was playing with the best that could afford to go to it.
Right. That could you have the monetary ability to go.
So I always, ever since I was, 17, 18, 19 years old, and then throughout my whole career where I'm still seeing it, I always knew I was going to give back to rugby in some way. Rugby gave me so much. And it was right when I retired, it's like, this is what I'm going to do. I want this to be a passion project. It is not my full-time job. I've never taken a penny from the foundation. It is just complete passion. And that is one of our biggest arms is giving scholarships to boys and girls so that doesn't hinder their families and they can't say, no, sorry, we can't, afford to go to a camp. So, this year alone, we're going to be hitting 26 scholarships.
Nice.
Boys and girls. So yeah, we're matched up. So it's 13 boys and 13 girls giving opportunities so they can do that. So I mean, last year we did 12, and the year before that we did 4. So our trajectory is going really well, and I'm so grateful for the foundation supporters and donors and everything else, because that is where I see the biggest change. We're able to do ball grants, we're able to do jerseys, we're able to put on clinics, and we're sponsoring tournaments. And but the foundation scholarships is so remarkable and so rewarding from my side, because I'm trying to eliminate that pay to play at that elite level. I mean, I get it that people, need to charge everything else. And I'm lucky in a situation where, I have a few extra hours a week where I can, make some phone calls, put together some things, and have a team that is on my team of being able to give back.
Now, just in case there's people that are watching that are young, aspiring rugby players that are facing the situations that you're talking about, not having the monetary value to take these really cool opportunities to go to camps, to do tours. How does one apply for a scholarship with the Todd Clever Foundation?
Yeah, great question. So I mean, follow our socials, from Instagram, and check out our website. Whenever we do have the resources, or whenever we do have a partnership, we'll announce it on there. And then we have an application process that's very easy. We make sure that we're doing the right thing, and it's not me picking out of a hat. It's us reading them, working with if it's, for instance, the Lit Sevens. We've gotten dozens and dozens of
I'm sure
applications for this amazing camp that Perry Baker, two-time World Sevens Player of the Year, Nia Tapper, bronze are going to be coaching. It's like, what amazing opportunity. So I want to help out with the picking out, because they're going to be there coaching. They're going to be part of it. So I would just suggest, follow our socials and tag along. And whenever we have something out there, if it's like a ball grant, or we're going to give away sets of jerseys, or if it's, giving scholarships, it's easy to apply.
Perfect, perfect. And I'll make sure to put the social medias in the description of the video on my YouTube channel to send everybody pointing towards your direction. Before we start getting towards the wrapping up of this interview, let's talk about the USA Eagles right now. We talked a little bit about things that we might be facing as we're preparing for the 2031 World Cup men's here in the United States, and of course the 2033 women's here in the United States as well. But let's focus right now on the men's, because like I mentioned before, this weekend they're going to be kicking off a European tour. Portugal on the 9th, 16th against Tonga, 23rd against Spain. Three pretty decent teams, not easy teams to push over. Definitely will give some competition. The USA Eagles under Scott Lawrence recently participated in the Pacific Nations Cup. Wasn't the best showing per se on that one. But as you mentioned before, and I really was following Scott Lawrence's interviews and his mention about the struggles that the team has had. There was, I think, in preparation for their first game against Canada, I think they only had like 5 days to prepare for that game, which is not, as you know, as a rugby player, is not a lot of time to set up for a game against a international competition level team. Looking at what's going on in the next couple of days, looking now also too towards the future as we're preparing for 2031, which is not necessarily, like you mentioned, not necessarily too far, not necessarily too close. What does the USA Eagles need to do to kind of prepare themselves? Because again, this is going to be a World Cup that America will be watching because it's here. And obviously, we need to show up for that. So what do we need to do in preparation for that World Cup?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, from finding out what our success is. That's the biggest question, and that comes in different layers. So if it's selling every seat in a stadium during the World Cup, even from All Blacks games to the Namibia games, or that the community and the cities and the tourism boards and the broadcasting and the major sponsors of the tournament, invest in that. Like, is that success? Is success for us, making the quarterfinals for the USA Eagles? Is it, making sure that there's a million rugby players that are playing in the U.S. When it's happening, and that will be the families and fans and community things. So there's a different layer of what is success, and I think you'd have to ask sort of the big like Bill Gorn, the USA Rugby CEO, what is that success? Have to ask the CEO of World Rugby, what are you looking for? And then you look at sort of someone from me, and if it's just we're talking about high performance and the Eagles, it's sort of Scott Lawrence hasn't been having that job for very long, and
right.
Stamp on it. So he's changed a lot of great things, and we have a great communication and great relationship, on how we see, the Eagles and what it means and what it should mean for them and everything else. So, I mean, there's they're over in Europe now. They're getting ready for their first game, as you said, and we have 2 awesome Eagles that are about to receive their 50th cap. You have Greg Peterson.
Right.
Greg Peterson and Nate Osberger. So I mean, how awesome is that? And
that's very cool.
Hopefully they won't see anything, but like Scott Lawrence reached out to a lot of our alumni that have already had 50 caps. Hey, can you make something special for them?
Oh, that's cool.
But that's how he's building it in the thought and effort. And whenever they were in LA, I came out for the jersey presentation. I was able to speak with the team. So it's you're always invited in this sort of family and brotherhood, and I think we're going to need a lot more of that, of support, because if it's bringing people there, or if it's introducing them to potential sponsors, or if it's looking after the Eagles in some sort of way, they definitely are under utilized and under supported, and don't have enough resources. As you mentioned, they had 5 or so days before they played a test match. You kind of look at the competition and what they do in South America. If it's Uruguay or Chile, it's like, goes back to what I said. We don't have any centrally located contracts for those. They're all contracted through MLR or the professional club overseas or whatever else, and then they get paid a per diem for USA Rugby. So you're not going to get them. But imagine having the USA Eagles playing for the Anthem or another team. Now they're together for 6+ months.
Right.
Now you're actually going to be on the same page. Now you're actually going to be able to train full time, be a professional outfit, have competition within the squad, and you can ultimately get better. So that's what I would rather see, sort of, and maybe that process for the Anthem. But with our Eagles now, why wouldn't they, compete against a lot of the foreigners that are represented other MLR teams? I think they would do really well. So
right.
And we would have, the same systems, and we would have, guys playing with each other, knowing each other better, each other more. Not just like whenever you go to the Eagles, it's a tour, and you're gonna have a good 3 weeks, play 3 games, and then go back, separate. Our country's Our country's big. We have opportunity to bring them together. If it's within 2 teams, if it's with 1 team, something like that. That makes a little bit more sense from my side.
I agree.
Rather than dispersing them throughout the whole country.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you totally about that. That's why the Anthem process kind of excited me. But I was kind of thinking it seems more like you'd be almost like a junior Eagles team, not age-wise, but like a younger version of it, because you already have all the other Eagles already dispersed. And I feel it might be a little hard to kind of get them all together. But if you start already with this group in Anthem, there you have it right there. But I do like the idea that if they could somehow do it, maybe like you said, you have 2 teams. So you have your Anthem and then another team that's a little bit more the older Eagles. You have a whole half a year of these guys playing together. And again, I've never played rugby before, but it always seems to me, and when I speak to other rugby players like yourself, it always seems that cohesion, of knowing your teammates, of knowing where your teammate's going to be, of knowing what your teammate is thinking, that it's not something that develops overnight. Yeah, it takes weeks and months of just being together and knowing, oh, if I throw the ball this way, he's there, right? So, and you can't develop that if, like you said, you're already dispersed, you're playing against each other, not with each other, and then all of a sudden, all right, now it's time to go. Let's go team up and play in Europe. So it does, it is. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think hopefully maybe something like that could come up in the future, but we'll see. As we are getting close to wrapping up, let's talk again about the cohesionness and, talking to you and the way that you talk about the camaraderie. And like I mentioned before, it seems like rugby is definitely one of those unique sports where the camaraderie amongst players and the character of each player really, really stands out, more so than I feel in any other sport, not only in America, but in the world. Throughout your career, you've been in many, many locker rooms, you've had many, many teammates. But, name 1 or 2 teammates in particular in your career have really stood out to you as being your best bud, or just a person that you just always were happy to have them with you on the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, sort of, playing Super Rugby and having, Springbok legends and sharing a few.
Oh, there you go.
Or, All Blacks, 7s and 15s when I was in New Zealand. When I went to Japan, had a mixture of Springboks, Wallabies, and All Blacks, in that. So having that, and then ultimately being with the US and, leading that team, I know how important it is having that leadership, quality and making sure that you are doing what's best for the team. And if that's leading by example, or if that's talking, or if that's, standing up for, the rights of them. So, there's probably too many to list, just like I just, thought of 20 names right now, but I don't want to much. But I've been very fortunate to learn how to be a good teammate. I've learned how to not be what not to do as well as a leader. So I've had a lot of good things, and same thing with with coaches. I've learned a lot of things of how I'll never want to conduct myself for my family or business, of how they do it. But then also on the other side of man, I really look up to these coaches, and the work ethic and the sacrifice that they are willing to do. So from a players, from a follower, from a leader to from admin and management, I've seen some really good, and I've seen some really bad practices, and that's what shaped me to the man I am today. And throughout that whole process, I've been able to keep my head held high, and be proud of who I am, look myself in the mirror, and be like, oh, I can sleep well tonight, because what, I did give my all to this effort.
Oh, nice. Really nice. So wrapping it up, we got two final questions I have for you. One of them, again, you might have a dozen different answers, so just take your time with this one. Throughout your career, what is the best moment of your career? Can you singlify one moment in your career that just really sticks out as this was the greatest moment of my career?
Oh man, I would just, I just see a timeline. You just throw a year out there, and I can pick something that was so special. From being on the under-19 team, and playing with my older brother. Something special. Getting my first cap in Argentina and Buenos Aires. That was awesome. Running out of the tunnel of Hong Kong Sevens. Being being part of the World Cup try of the year in 2007 against South Africa, and feeling the electricity of the stadium and the fans, and just celebration. It was just like, wow, and ultimately, from my retirement game, playing against and putting over 50 points on them, and qualifying for America
for the 2019, yeah.
America, like that has never been done before. And knowing that was my time to hang up the boots, even though my parents were disappointed, because they wanted to watch me at another World Cup, and they wanted to. But I knew that I left the jersey in a better place than when I found it, and if I continue to play and be part of the squad, it's like, I've played in World Cups, I've done these sort of things. I would just be doing it for myself. It wouldn't be for the longevity of the Eagles, and that was always my goal. And when I took over as captain, and being an Eagle, was leaving that jersey in a better place than when I got it.
Got it. Oh, that's awesome. Last question, because we started talking about the youth and the process of getting to rugby. If you could give one advice to a person who's watching this video, young kid, teenager, someone in their mid-20s who just picked up a rugby ball, if you could give them one advice to have not necessarily a great career, but at least a fun and inspiring career in rugby, what would that advice be?
Oh man, I mean, rugby will give you whatever you want. It just matters of your work rate and what your want is. Rugby is the best sport in the world. I mean, if you love rugby and you don't like contact, you can play flag rugby.
Right.
Rugby, you can play on the beach. You can play co-ed rugby. If you want to travel with your best buddies, and tackle hard and drink hard, you can play club rugby and travel the world and go on these tours and have the best time, with that. You want to represent, your country in the Olympics, or, at a World Cup on the biggest stage. You can, you can put that as your goal. So there's things from, from little bit, from grassroots to enjoyment to learning to giving back, if it's refereeing or coaching or donating to your local rugby club, because we all know that, rugby teams need jerseys, rugby teams
Oh yeah.
field space, rugby teams need, gas money or sponsored meals. And that's, one of my biggest, feel goods is being able to go be there for the rugby community in some sort of way. And I have a lot of people that reach out to me. It's like, oh, we need this. And it's like, oh, well, we don't really have that at the moment if the foundation doesn't have anything else. But I will make a call. I'll be like, let's get creative. Let's put on an event, or let's do something and problem solve this. Because one thing I hate is, if people want to do something in a group that is so dedicated and there's restraints because it's, it costs money, it's financial. So again, that's my biggest passion and my biggest gift to people of like, be a fan, get involved, something, be a rugby mom, cutting orange or giving. But it is the best sport in the world, hands down.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. You can truly see the passion and love you have for rugby. And again, I really do appreciate your time, Todd. And you've given so much of it to me in this interview. It's been amazing. Talked a lot about USA Rugby. And again, we still have other things I'd love to talk to you about. So maybe we could do another interview, or again, I'll see you in a couple of weeks and we'll talk a little bit about your time in Japan and other things. But again, Todd, thank you very much for joining us here at Rugby411. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, I'll put all your social media information, especially with the Todd Clever Foundation, in my information. So if any young aspiring rugby players or organizations need some assistance or just some further information, they could easily contact you. So again, Todd, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it. And again, this was the Rugby411 interview with Joshua Shibata. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the pitch.